You wake to the sound of axes striking wood. Not one axe, several. The blows come slowly through the darkness beneath the deck, dull and heavy, traveling through the beams beneath your hammock and into your ribs. For a few confused moments, you think another ship has found you. You imagine boarding hooks biting the rail, soldiers climbing over the V side, and muskets waiting above the hatch. Then the hull rolls, and a crust of white ice breaks from somewhere overhead. It lands on the deck with the sound of shattered pottery. No one is attacking the ship. The men above are trying to stop the Atlantic from dragging her over. It is the winter of 1720, and you are far north of every warm island, shown on the faded chart in the captain's cabin. The pirate brigantine. Swift is crossing the open ocean after a season spent haunting the fishing grounds near Newfoundland. She is small, fast, crowded, and carrying more stolen cargo than her builders ever intended. During the night, freezing spray has hardened over her rails, her guns, her ropes, and the lower edges of her sails. Every new layer adds weight above the waterline. Every roll becomes a little slower. Every return becomes a little less certain. You lie inside a narrow canvas hammock, wearing nearly everything you own. A wool cap is pulled over your ears. 2 shirts cling beneath a salt-stiff coat. Your stockings are damp, your boots are colder than the air, and there is no blanket thick enough to keep the chill from entering through your shoulders. The hammock was warm when you first climbed into it. Now it feels like a sling made from winter itself. There is no cabin waiting for you. There is no bed. There is no stove glowing safely beside your feet. There is only timber, rope, darkness, and the deep movement of an ocean that does not care whether the men above it are merchants, sailors, prisoners, or pirates. A lantern swings near the main hatch. Its flame has been turned low to save oil and reduce the risk of fire. Each time the ship rolls to starboard, the light bends across a row of sleeping faces. Men hang in, their hammocks shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in coats, sailcloth, scraps of blanket, and whatever dry fabric they managed to claim before nightfall. One man sleeps with his hands inside his shirt. Another has tied a scarf across his mouth so that every breath reaches him slightly warmer. A third is awake, staring at the beams, listening to the axes. Above you, someone shouts for another bucket. A rope runs through a block. Boots stamp against the deck. Then the bell sounds once. The watch is changing. Your turn has come. You push the edge of the hammock aside and lower 1 foot into the dark. The deck is so cold that you feel it through the sole of your boot. Around you, other men begin to move, groaning softly, fastening belts, searching for mittens, and pulling stiff clothing over stiff limbs. No. One complains loudly. Complaint is a waste of breath, and breath is one of the few warm things left aboard. At the foot of the ladder, the quartermaster waits with a hooded lantern. He is not dressed like the pirate captains in paintings that will be made long after your bones are gone. There is no bright red coat, no great black hat, no feather. He wears tarred canvas over wool, a scarf around his throat, and a pistol beneath his coat to keep the powder as dry as possible. "On deck," he says, "bring anything that can strike ice." You take a wooden mallet from beside the carpenter's chest. The hatch opens. Cold air falls through it like water. You climb towards the night, towards the axes, and towards an Atlantic, so black that the ship appears to be sailing through an empty sky. The first breath on deck hurts. It enters clean and sharp, carrying salt, wet rope, smoke, and the metallic scent of ice. Snow is not falling, yet the air is crowded with white fragments torn from the crests of waves. They rush past the lanterns and vanish into darkness. The sea itself is almost invisible. You know it is there because the ship rises, pauses, and descends into it again. The Swift is a brigantine of a little more than 100 tons, though. No one aboard agrees on the exact figure. She began life as a merchant vessel, built for speed and cargo rather than comfort. Pirates did not usually build special pirate ships. They took what the sea offered: sloops, schooners, brigantines, merchantmen, former privateers, and occasionally large ships that could carry many guns. The best prize was not always the grandest. A smaller vessel with a shallow draft could enter creeks, escape across shoals, and turn more quickly than a heavy naval ship. The Swift has 2 masts, a narrow waist, 12 small guns, and a stern that has been repaired with timber from at least 3 other vessels. Her original name is still faintly visible beneath the black paint on the transom. No one has bothered to scrape it completely away. A ship at sea is always partly herself, and partly every repair that has kept her alive. Tonight, the brigantine carries 63 men. That is too many for comfort, and just enough for violence. A merchant captain might have crossed with half that number, because wages and provisions cost money. A pirate crew preferred more hands. More men could handle sail quickly, overwhelm a prize without a long fight, and replace the injured or sick. But each extra body required water, food, sleeping space, and a share of whatever was taken. The Swift is crowded with labor, appetite, and ambition. You stand beside the forward hatch and look along the deck. In daylight, it is only 30 paces from the raised quarterdeck to the beak beneath, the bowsprit. In the dark, it feels longer. The masts rise into blackness. The rigging hums in the wind, lines glazed with ice shine. Whenever the lantern turns towards them, the guns are secured behind closed ports. But frost has formed along their iron barrels. Coils of rope have become pale and rigid. A bucket left upright has frozen to the deck. The crew works in pairs. One man strikes the ice, the other uses a shovel, board, or bare boot to push the fragments towards the scuppers. Ice is worst where it gathers high. Along the rail, around the boats, and in the rigging. Weight low in the hull can steady a ship. Weight high above the water makes her sluggish and dangerous. If too much, gathers on one side, the ship may heel farther than the wind alone would drive her. The quartermaster sends you to the port rail. You kneel beside a gun, carriage, and begin striking the white shell around its wheels. Each blow travels up your arm. The ice resists, then cracks in a clean line. A plate, as broad as your hand, slides free and disappears through a gap in the rail. Beneath it, the timber is dark and wet. The ship rolls again. Everyone stops for half a heartbeat, not from fear, but to feel what she is doing. Sailors learn a vessel through their legs. They know the normal lift of her bow, the ordinary pause at the top of a wave, the familiar shudder of canvas taking wind. Tonight the swift pauses too long. The weight is changing her rhythm. You strike again. Around you, the axes continue. Most people imagine pirates beneath a hot sun. They picture green islands, clear water, bright sand, and a warm wind, filling patched sails. That world existed. The Caribbean and the eastern coast of North America were central waters during the years now called the Golden Age of piracy. Merchant routes carried sugar, tobacco, silver, textiles, food, weapons, timber, enslaved people, and countless smaller goods between Europe, Africa, the Americas, and the islands. Where trade gathered, robbery followed. But pirates did not belong to one sea. They followed ships. Fishing fleets gathered near Newfoundland. Merchantmen crossed towards Europe. Vessels from New England carried fish, timber, livestock, provisions. Ships from the Caribbean sailed north with sugar and rum, while European ships came west with manufactured goods and new passengers. A pirate captain who understood these movements could wait near a headland, a narrow channel, or a crowded fishing ground and find more prizes than he might meet in weeks of wandering open water. The Swift spent the late summer among fog, fishing boats, and rocky harbors. Her crew took salt cod, canvas, powder, tools, wool clothing, and 2 small merchant vessels. Coins were welcome, but pirates stole practical things as readily as treasure. Food kept them alive. Sailcloth repaired the ship. Medicine mattered more than jewelry when fever entered a crowded deck. A good carpenter, navigator, or surgeon might be invited to join. A barrel of onions could become more valuable than a silver cup. After months at sea, the problem was time. The fishing season ended. The weather turned. Patrols increased. A captured captain escaped and carried word of the Swift's appearance to a colonial governor. A naval sloop was sent north, and rumors traveled faster than the pirate brigantine could sail. So the crew voted to cross eastward towards the Azores, where they hoped to take on water, sell part of the cargo through friendly middlemen, and decide whether to continue towards Africa or turn south into warmer lanes. It was an ambitious plan made late in the year. Some argued against it. Others claimed the Atlantic would remain manageable for another month. The Atlantic did not hear the vote. For 6 days the wind was fair. The ship ran east under grey skies. The men joked that winter had missed them. Then the pressure fell. Clouds thickened from the northwest. The sea changed colour. By sunset yesterday, the wind had strengthened enough to force the topgallant sails down. By midnight, spray had begun freezing wherever it landed. Now the Swift is somewhere beyond the Grand Banks, outside easy rescue, and far from any harbour she could enter before morning. No one aboard knows the exact longitude. The navigator has estimates. He has a log, line, compass, hourglass, charts, and experience. But no reliable marine chronometer exists for ordinary sailors in 1720. East and west are harder to know than north and south. The ship could be farther along than the captain believes, or much less. That uncertainty is part of every ocean crossing in your century. The chart in the cabin is useful, but the sea beneath the keel has never read it. You chip ice from the rail and think about the warm islands behind you. They feel less like real places than dreams someone described in another life. Cold at sea is not the same as cold on land. On land, a wall may stop the wind. A fire may dry clothing. A roof may keep rain from reaching a bed. Even a poor shelter creates a boundary between the body and the weather. A wooden sailing ship has boundaries, but they are thin, damp, and always moving. The hull keeps out most of the ocean, not all of it. Water enters through open hatches, leaking seams, wet clothes, dripping rigging, and the boots of every man who comes below. Condensation gathers on beams and planks. Bilge water waits beneath the lowest deck. Spray crosses the rail and spreads over timber that never remains dry for long. Wool is the most useful protection you have. It can retain some warmth even when damp, though that does not make wet wool comfortable. Sailors layer shirts, waistcoats, jackets, coats, scarves, caps, stockings, and whatever else can be found or stolen. Outer garments may be treated with tar, oil, or grease to resist water. Mittens are precious because rope work can tear the skin from cold fingers. Gloves with separate fingers allow more skill, but they are harder to make and easier to lose. Your own coat belonged to a fisherman from Marblehead. You know this because his name is still stitched inside the collar. He surrendered it after the Swift took his vessel in September. The quartermaster recorded the garment as common plunder, and it was issued to you after your older coat split along the shoulder. Pirates did not always divide everything immediately. Clothing, weapons, provisions, and equipment could be distributed according to need before the remaining value was shared. The fisherman's coat is too broad across the chest and too short at the wrists. Tonight, you are grateful for every inch of it. Wind finds the openings around your neck and sleeves. Spray settles on the front and freezes into a thin shell. When you bend, the fabric crackles. Your scarf is wet where your breath has gathered. Tiny crystals form along the edge nearest your mouth. The greatest danger is not one dramatic wave. It is the slow theft of heat. A man working hard may feel warm enough to loosen his coat. Then the work stops, sweat cools, and the body begins to shiver. Fingers become clumsy. Judgment weakens. A sailor may insist he is well because cold has made him less able to understand how unwell he has become. No one aboard uses the modern word hypothermia. They recognize the signs. Anyway, violent shaking, slurred words, a strange calm, a man who stops complaining, a man who wants to lie down in a place where no one should, sleep. The boatswain watches for these changes as carefully as he watches the sails. When a young deckhand begins fumbling with a knot, he is ordered below, given a swallow of warm broth, and placed between two men in hammocks so their bodies can help warm him, pirate or not. A crew cannot afford to lose useful hands to pride. You continue striking ice until feeling leaves your fingertips. Then you tuck your hands beneath your arms for 3 breaths, flex them, and begin again. A ship never goes to sleep. Men sleep. Watches do not. The crew is divided so that part of it can rest while the rest steers, trims sail, looks for danger, checks the pumps, tends lines, and listens to the hull. On many vessels, the day is divided into watches of several hours. Bells mark the passage of time within them, usually measured by sand running through an hourglass and turned at regular intervals. The exact system differs from ship to ship. Pirates are not a navy. They borrow habits from merchant service, privateers, fishing vessels, and warships. Nearly every man aboard the Swift learned the sea somewhere else. Their routines overlap because the ocean rewards methods that work. Tonight, the ordinary watch pattern has collapsed. The ice has called. Men from both groups. Some who should be sleeping are on deck with mallets. Others remain below because they will be needed when the wind changes. The captain cannot exhaust everyone at once. A crew that spends all its strength before the worst hour may have nothing left when canvas, tiers, or a mast begins to fail. The bell sounds again, its note flattened by wind. The man beside you counts without looking up. Sailors count bells almost, without thought. Time at sea is heard as much as seen. The watch ends, the glass turns, and the ship continues. Your body understands the watches better than any clock. It knows the ache of being awakened before warmth has reached the hammock. It knows the strange appetite that arrives in the middle of the night. It knows how daylight can feel like a meal after hours of darkness. At sea, sleep comes in pieces. 4 hours, perhaps, sometimes less. A few minutes against a coil of rope. A stolen moment beside the galley. A heavy, dreamless fall into the hammock after reefing sail in rain. The modern idea of one long, protected night belongs to bedrooms, not working ships. Pirates may have escaped merchant discipline, but they did not escape the need for watches. Freedom from one captain does not free anyone from Wind. A ship with no lookout can strike another vessel, a shoal, or drifting wreckage. A ship with no helmsman turns broadside to the sea. A ship with no one checking the lines can lose sail before the sleepers below understand what has happened. The Swift's lookout stands near the bow, tied by a short line so a wave cannot take him without resistance. His task is almost impossible. Darkness and blown spray reduce the world to a few yards. He watches for pale water, floating ice, lights, and the sudden shape of a breaking sea. Every few minutes, he calls back that there is nothing ahead. The words should be reassuring. Instead, they remind you how little can be seen. Your hammock is not waiting in a private corner. It hangs below the main deck among dozens of others, each suspended from hooks or beams and spaced so closely that one sleeper's shoulder may press against the canvas beside him. When the hammocks are all slung, the deck becomes a low forest of bodies. To move through it, a man turns, sideways, ducks beneath feet, and steps over chests, buckets, weapons, and bags. The hammock is one of the most sensible objects aboard. A fixed bed would slide, throw its sleeper, or require more space than a crowded vessel can spare. A hammock swings with the ship. When properly hung, it cradles the body as the deck tilts beneath it. It can be rolled during the day, carried, aired, patched, and even used as a burial shroud when death comes far from land. But it is not a soft bed. The canvas presses around the shoulders, the ropes creak, damp fabric chills the back. A man with broad hips or an injured rib may struggle to find comfort. Vermin can hide in seams. Clothing remains on because there is nowhere warm to undress and little privacy, even if there were. Some men do not own hammocks. New recruits may sleep on spare sailcloth, chests, coils of rope, or the bare deck until one becomes available. Officers and senior men may claim better spaces in the stern or beneath the quarterdeck. But on a small pirate ship, the difference between rank and ordinary life is narrower than on a naval vessel. The captain may have a cabin, yet even that cabin is cramped, cold, and full of charts, weapons, stolen goods, and damp clothing. Pirate stories often fill the lower deck with laughter, drinking, and songs. Those things happen, especially after a successful capture or in harbor. Most nights at sea are quieter. Men are tired. The ship creaks. Someone coughs. Someone scratches at lice. Someone whispers a prayer he would deny speaking in daylight. The air below is thick with tar, unwashed bodies, wet wool, stale smoke, bilge, and old food. Hatches provide ventilation when weather permits. In a storm, they are narrowed or closed, trapping warmth, but also every smell. A lantern burns low. Open flame is dangerous because the ship is made of timber, rope, canvas, pitch, oil, alcohol, and powder. 1. Careless spark can be more deadly than an enemy gun. Tonight, your hammock has been left slung because there is no time to clear the sleeping deck. When you return below, it may be wetter than before. Men coming down the ladder will bring ice on their shoulders and water on their boots. The cold will gather in the canvas. Still, after an hour striking the rail, you begin to think of that hammock with longing. Comfort is not an absolute thing. It is simply whatever hurts less than the place you are standing now. The man working beside you was born in Bristol. The man beyond him speaks French when angry and English when calm. The cook is an African sailor who escaped from a plantation island years ago and has crossed the Atlantic more times than most officers. The carpenter is Dutch. One of the best helmsmen is from the Azores. Another sailor claims to be from London, though no one believes him because his accent changes whenever he drinks. Pirate crews could be multinational because Atlantic labor was multinational. Merchant ships, naval vessels, privateers, fishing boats, slave ships, and colonial ports drew men from many places into the same dangerous economy. Some joined pirates willingly. Some were forced at first, and later chose to remain. Some were escaping brutal captains, unpaid wages, naval impressment, slavery, debt, or the law. Others simply wanted a larger share of wealth than ordinary seafaring offered. Not every pirate ship was equal, democratic, or welcoming. The historical record contains cruelty, coercion, racism, mutiny, and betrayal. Yet some crews created arrangements that were unusually participatory for their age. Men might vote on major decisions, elect or remove leaders, agree to written articles, and divide plunder by established shares. A sailor who had almost no voice on a merchant ship could suddenly have one vote among many. That did not make piracy noble. It made it complicated. The Swift's crew includes men who have robbed, threatened, beaten, and killed. It also includes men who were themselves beaten by officers before turning pirate. The same person can be a victim in one chapter of his life and a danger in the next. The Atlantic does not arrange people into clean stories. You joined 7 months ago after the merchant ship on which you served was captured off the Carolinas. Your captain surrendered quickly. The pirates took powder, medicine, 2 casks of flour, and 4 sailors. You were invited to sign their articles. The choice was not entirely free, but it was freer than remaining aboard a leaking merchantman whose owner owed you 9 months of wages. You told yourself it would be temporary. Most men tell themselves that at first. Now you know the habits of the swift. You know which plank lifts near the galley, where the carpenter hides dry tinder, how the quartermaster counts shares, and which line must be eased when the brigantine begins to gripe into the wind. You know the sound of the captain's step and the cook's silence when someone has insulted him. You know who sings, who steals, who cannot swim, and who becomes brave only when others are watching. A ship turns strangers into a small world because no one can leave. without water beneath him. Tonight, the world is 63 men wide. The rules of the ship are written on 2 sheets kept in an oilskin packet inside the quartermaster's chest. They are called the Articles. Every man who joins makes his mark or signs his name beneath them. Some can write clearly. Others form a cross, a crooked letter, or a symbol known only to themselves. The value lies not in elegant handwriting, but in agreement. The Swift's articles state how plunder will be divided. The captain receives more than an ordinary sailor, but not a fortune beyond everyone else. The quartermaster, sailing master, carpenter, and surgeon receive additional shares because the crew depends upon their skill. Compensation is promised for severe injury. A man who loses an arm, leg, eye, or hand in service of the company will receive money or goods before the rest is divided. The Articles also forbid certain behavior. Weapons must be kept ready. Quarrels that threaten the ship are not tolerated. Theft from the common stock is treated more harshly than theft from an enemy because it attacks the trust holding the crew together. Lights and candles are controlled after a certain hour to reduce the risk of fire. Gambling may be restricted because debt creates bitterness faster than bad weather. Different crews wrote different rules. Some allowed women aboard, others did not. Some settled disputes on shore, some required music to stop on a particular day of rest. The surviving examples show pirates trying to govern unstable communities of armed men who had chosen robbery as an occupation. That is not easy. A naval captain can appeal to the state, the law, the threat of court, martial, and a chain of command larger than his ship. A pirate captain has only reputation, agreement, fear, skill, and the willingness of the crew to continue following him. On the Swift, the captain commands during battle and pursuit. The quartermaster protects the crew's interests, oversees shares, and can challenge the captain when the immediate danger has passed. Major decisions may be put to a vote: where to sail, whether to attack, what to do with a difficult prisoner, whether to accept a pardon, or when to abandon a damaged vessel. The vote that sent the Swift east was close. 34 supported the crossing, 25 opposed it. 4 were too ill or injured to vote. The decision became everyone's problem the moment the anchor rose. Now men who argued for warmer waters strike ice beside men who demanded the Azores. No one asks how each person voted. A ship cannot survive if every rope becomes a political argument. The Articles are below deck, dry inside their packet. The Atlantic is writing different rules above. The captain stands near the helm, one hand braced against the rail. His name is Elias Vane, though some believe that is borrowed. He is in his late 30s, which makes him older than many aboard. He was once a privateer during wartime, legally authorized to attack enemy shipping. When peace came, the paper that separated prize-taking from piracy became useless. The habits, debts, and armed ship remained. Vane is not shouting. Good captains rarely waste their voices against wind. He speaks to the sailing master, who leans close, listens, and passes orders through the boatswain. The chain is short because the ship is small. A command can travel from stern to bow in seconds if the wind permits words to survive. Popular stories make pirate captains absolute rulers. Real authority could be less secure. A captain was valued for judgment in chase, battle, navigation, and crisis. If he proved cowardly, reckless, or unlucky, a crew might remove him. Some famous pirates commanded through charisma. Others relied on fear. Many balanced both. Vane's strength is patience. He does not pursue every sail. He understands that a prize must be worth the powder, damage, and risk. He knows that the fastest way to lose a ship is to confuse courage with movement. The quartermaster, Able Rook, is different. He is broad, quiet, and suspicious of every unexplained number. He records cargo, settles disputes, controls stores, and ensures the captain does not take more than the articles allow. During a capture, he often leads the boarding party or receives the surrendered vessel. During ordinary days, more men bring complaints to him than to Vane. The two men are not friends. That may be healthy. A ship where every officer agrees too easily can become a private kingdom. The tension between captain and quartermaster creates a rough balance. Vane wants speed. Rook wants provisions counted. Vane wants to keep a skilled prisoner. Rook asks whether the man is willing. Vane wants to chase in poor weather. Rook reminds him that every damaged sail belongs to the whole company. Tonight, both men agree on the ice. That is enough to worry everyone. Rook moves along the deck, checking hands and sending the coldest men below. Vane studies the compass and the angle of the wind. Between them, the sailing master calculates whether the ship can turn south without exposing her side to the heaviest seas. Power aboard the Swift is shared, but the ocean has no vote. A sailing ship is often described as though it were a single object. To those who serve aboard, it is a collection of systems that must cooperate. The hull keeps the sea outside. The frames give the hull strength. Planks overlap or meet along seams, packed with fibers and sealed with pitch. Masts carry spars. Spars carry sails. Standing rigging supports the masts. Running rigging moves the yards and controls the canvas. Blocks change the direction of force. Pumps remove water that enters, despite every effort to stop it. Each part speaks in its own way. Loose rigging slaps. Tight rigging hums. A strained mast groans deep inside the timber. Water beneath the deck makes a dull moving sound when the ship rolls. A healthy pump has a rhythm. A damaged rudder can be felt through the tiller or wheel before the break becomes visible. The carpenter understands these voices better than most men understand speech. His name is Hendrik Voss. He works without drama, carrying an adze, auger, saw, caulking iron, and a collection of wedges that look ordinary, until the ship begins leaking. In battle, the carpenter waits below to plug holes and shore damaged frames. In storms, he inspects the mast, steps, hatches, pumps, and seams. When the ship grounds, he may determine whether she floats again. Tonight, Voss moves with a lantern beneath the quarterdeck. He checks the beams where heavy ice and violent rolling transfer strain into the hull. Every vessel flexes. Timber must move or break. The question is whether the movement remains within what the ship can endure. The Swift was built to carry cargo low in her hold. Now that hold contains barrels of salt, fish, flour, cloth, tools, sugar, spare, cordage, shot, powder, and several chests whose owners would still recognize them. The cargo is lashed, but no lashing is perfect. If a cask breaks free, it can smash other stores or shift the ship's balance. Below the cargo lies ballast, stone, iron, and dense material placed low to steady the hull. Above, ice gathers where no builder intended weight to remain. You strike the rail until the mallet head loosens. Voss appears, takes it from you, drives a wedge into the handle with 3 quick blows, and returns it. "Not the plank," he says, "only the ice." The warning sounds obvious. In darkness, with numb hands, it is not. A frightened crew can damage the ship while trying to save her. You aim more carefully. The ice breaks. The timber remains. There is more rope aboard the Swift than any new sailor expects. It runs upward, downward, forward, aft, across decks, through blocks, around pins, beside masts, and into coils arranged with care. Each line has a purpose and a name. Halyards raise yards or sails, sheets control the lower corners of canvas, braces turn yards, clewlines gather sails, downhauls pull, stays support, shrouds rise beside the masts like ladders into the sky. A sailor must know them by touch. At night, in rain, or inside blowing spray, labels would be useless. A man reaches for the correct line because he remembers its position, thickness, lay, and direction. The knowledge becomes part of his hands. Rope in your century is made from natural fibers such as hemp. It is strong, but not immortal. Salt, water, friction, strain, rot, and cold all change it. Tar protects standing rigging and gives the ship its familiar dark smell. Running lines must remain flexible enough to move. Through blocks, ice makes everything less obedient. A line that should bend becomes stiff. A knot tightens into a hard lump. Blocks freeze. Canvas grows heavy. Reef points resist fingers. The crew must strike, twist, breathe upon, and work the frozen rigging until it moves. The boatswain calls for men at the main braces. You leave the rail and join a line of sailors along the deck. The ship must alter the angle of a yard. Under ordinary conditions, the command is routine. Tonight, the brace is glazed and the block above is reluctant together. The boatswain says. The men lean back. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the ice cracks inside the block. The line jerks, and everyone takes one stumbling step. The yard turns slowly overhead. canvas changes its voice. The sail stops hammering and begins to draw. No one sings a polished sea shanty. The great age of formal shanties belongs largely to later working ships. But sailors have always used calls, repeated phrases, grunts, and simple rhythms to coordinate effort. The boatswain gives a short cry. The men answer. Pulling together transforms many bodies into one machine. Your palms burn despite the cold. The rope is rough through wet mittens. A loose fiber catches at the skin near your thumb. You feel warmth there, and know it may be blood, though you cannot see it. When the brace is secured, the men stand, breathing steam above. The sail holds. For now, the cook's domain is a small protected space around an iron stove and brick hearth near the forward part of the ship. Calling it a kitchen would suggest room to turn around. There is little. Pots are secured because the floor never remains level. Knives are stored where they cannot slide. Firewood and coal must be kept dry. The flame is watched constantly. In rough weather, cooking becomes difficult or impossible, and the crew eats cold food rather than risk setting the ship alight tonight. The fire has survived. That alone feels miraculous. Men returning from the ice receive a tin cup or wooden bowl containing thin broth made from salt pork, peas, onion, biscuit crumbs, and more. Water than flavor. The cook has added pepper taken from a captured trader. The spice is faint, but everyone notices it. The main rations of sailing ships are built around endurance. Salted, beef or pork, dried fish, cheese when it lasts, peas, oatmeal, flour, and ship's biscuit. Fresh food disappears quickly. Livestock may be carried and slaughtered during the voyage, but a small pirate vessel rarely wastes deck space on animals unless taken recently from a prize. Ship's biscuit is baked hard and dry, so it can survive storage. In good condition, it requires soaking or strong teeth. In poor condition, it contains insects. Sailors learn to tap it against a table, break it in darkness, or ignore what moves inside. Hunger is an effective seasoning. Salt meat grows harder with time. It may be soaked before cooking. Fat floats on the broth. The same meal repeats until memory begins to confuse one day with another. Pirates sometimes ate better than merchant sailors immediately after taking a prize. A captured ship might provide fresh bread, fruit, vegetables, wine, livestock, or preserved foods intended for wealthy passengers. The feast could be brief. Once the fresh stores vanished, the crew returned to biscuit and salt. You crouch beside the galley bulkhead with both hands around your cup. Heat enters your fingers so quickly that it hurts. Steam touches your face. The broth smells of smoke and onion. You drink slowly. It is not delicious. It is wonderful. Around you, wet men stand in silence, each guarding the small warmth between his hands. One closes his eyes after the first swallow. Another tips the cup towards his beard to thaw the ice gathered there. The cook watches the pot and measures every serving. Generosity must be balanced against distance. No one knows how long the weather will delay the crossing. A full stomach tonight can become an empty barrel next week. The most important cargo aboard is not gold. It is water. Fresh water is stored in wooden casks, and wooden casks change what they contain. After days or weeks, water may taste of timber, old contents, algae, or the inside of the barrel itself. Heat makes it worse. Dirt enters. Insects appear. A cask may leak without anyone noticing until the level falls below expectation. The quartermaster measures water carefully. Each man receives a ration. Cooking requires more. Illness may require more. Washing the body is a luxury. Washing clothing in fresh water is almost unthinkable on a long passage. Rain is an opportunity. Sailcloth can be arranged to catch it. Directing. Clean water into containers. Snow and ice may appear useful tonight, but sea spray contains salt. Ice chipped from the rail is frozen ocean and cannot simply replace the water in the casks. Drinking seawater makes thirst worse and can kill a man who continues. Alcohol is common aboard ships because beer, wine, brandy, and rum can be stored and issued. But the old claim that sailors drank only alcohol because water was always poisonous is too simple. Ships carried water because men needed water. Beer and spirits supplemented it, improved morale, supplied calories, and sometimes made unpleasant water easier to swallow when mixed. The Swift carries rum from the Caribbean, cider taken near New England, and a little French brandy reserved for medicine, bargaining, and officers who believe they require it more than anyone else. Tonight, the cook adds a small measure of rum to the broth for the men, coming off the exposed deck. It creates warmth in the mouth and chest, though strong drink does not truly protect the body from cold. Too much can make a man careless, widen blood vessels near the skin, and create the illusion of warmth while heat escapes more quickly. The articles forbid drunkenness during a dangerous watch. That rule is obeyed more carefully in bad weather than in calm. You receive half a cup of watered rum after the broth. It tastes smoky, sweet, and slightly medicinal. You drink only enough to feel the edge of the cold soften. Near the galley, Rook opens the water ledger. He knows the number of full casks, the number opened, the number damaged, and the approximate days remaining. Numbers cannot predict the wind, but they can tell a crew when hope has become arithmetic. At the current ration, the Swift can remain at sea for nearly 3 weeks. At a reduced ration, longer. If 2 more casks have leaked, less. The carpenter will inspect them at daylight. Until then, the water exists partly as liquid and partly as trust. The sailing master keeps the ship's position inside his head on scraps of paper, and in a logbook no one else is permitted to handle with wet hands. His name is Matteo Silvera. He was raised on an island where nearly every horizon led to another voyage. He carries a compass, dividers, a backstaff, a lead line, an hourglass, and a small collection of charts, copied from better charts. None of these objects tells him exactly where the Swift is. Together, they make an argument. Latitude is the easier half. By measuring the height of the sun at noon or certain stars at night, a skilled navigator can estimate how far north or south the ship has traveled. Cloud can remove that opportunity for days. The deck's motion makes every observation less certain. Longitude is harder. To know east and west accurately, a navigator needs reliable time from a known reference point. In 1720, methods exist in theory and in specialized hands, but ordinary Atlantic sailors usually rely heavily on dead reckoning. They estimate direction by compass, speed by logline, and time by glass, then plot the distance traveled from the last known position. Every estimate contains error. Currents move the ship unseen. Wind pushes her sideways. Men misread the calm glass. A knot slips. The logline is handled poorly. The compass is affected by the ship or by local variation. Small errors gather across days until a coastline appears earlier or later than expected. To measure speed, sailors cast a small weighted board astern, attached to a line marked at intervals. As the ship moves away from the board, the line runs out. The amount paid out during a measured period gives an estimate of speed. The word knot comes from the marks tied into such lines. Tonight, there is no safe reason to cast the log. The sea is too violent. The line may foul, and the ship's immediate survival matters. More than an elegant entry in the book, Silvera studies the compass beneath a hooded lamp. He compares the present course with the wind, the direction of the swell, and his last reliable estimate. He believes the Swift is several hundred miles east of Newfoundland and slightly north of the route the crew intended. Vane asks how certain he is. Silvera answers in the language of honest navigation. Certain enough to be worried. The captain nods. A false certainty is more dangerous than a wide estimate. Good sailors know the difference between knowledge and confidence. For most of the night, the sky is a ceiling of cloud. Then, during a brief opening to the south, 3 stars appear. Every head on deck seems to notice them at once. They are not bright enough to change the sea. They do not warm the air. Yet their presence creates a sense of distance beyond the storm. The world has not ended at the edge of the lantern light. Above the cloud, the sky continues in its ordinary pattern. Silvera climbs to the quarterdeck with his instrument, though the opening may last only seconds. In calmer weather, he would brace himself carefully and take an observation. Tonight, the horizon is broken by waves. The ship rolls hard, and the stars vanish before he can use them. Still, sailors read the sky in ways that do not require precise measurement. They know the direction in which familiar constellations rise. They notice the moon's age, the color around it, the movement of cloud at different heights, and the brightness of stars near the horizon. Some signs are practical. Others belong to tradition, repetition, and superstition. At sea, the border between observation and belief can become thin. A ring around the moon may suggest moisture high in the air. A red sky can be interpreted according to the direction and time of day. Birds may reveal nearby land, though birds also travel farther than tired sailors expect. Floating vegetation, changes in water color, and the smell of earth may announce a coast. Pirates use the same sky as everyone hunting them. There is no outlaw constellation. The same North Star guides merchants, naval captains, fishermen, slavers, privateers, and men who have stolen their ship. The ocean is shared space, even when every vessel claims a different law. The cloud closes, darkness returns. One of the younger sailors mutters that the stars disappeared because the ship is cursed. An older man tells him the stars disappeared because clouds moved in front of them. Both explanations are spoken with equal certainty. You say nothing. The sky may be ordinary, but the feeling of seeing it remains. For those few seconds, you knew where above was. Elias Vane once carried papers that made his violence legal. During war, governments issued commissions allowing private ships to attack enemy commerce. These vessels were privateers. They operated for profit, but under authority. Captured ships were taken before courts, judged lawful prizes, and sold. Owners, captains, officers, and crews divided the proceeds according to rules and contracts. The difference between privateering and piracy could be a piece of paper, a flag, a date, and the opinion of the court holding the prisoner. When peace arrived, commissions expired. Some privateers returned to trade. Some crews found ordinary wages after years of expecting prize money. Others continued taking ships without legal authority. A man praised as useful during war could become a criminal when governments no longer required him. That does not mean all pirates were former privateers, or that legal privateering was gentle. Both systems brought armed theft and death into the lives of sailors and coastal communities. But wartime privateering helped create experienced crews, armed vessels, and expectations that fed piracy when conflicts ended. Vane served under a privateer captain who kept more than the crew believed fair. Prize courts delayed payment. Merchants argued over ownership. Sailors who had risked battle waited months for shares that shrank through fees and claims. He learned 2 lessons. First, law often follows money. Second, a crew with guns can write its own contract. When Vane turned pirate, he did not imagine himself becoming a story. He imagined receiving what he believed he was owed. Many crimes begin as explanations. The men aboard the Swift tell different versions of themselves. One says he fights tyrants. Another admits he wants silver. One claims he was forced aboard. Another claims he has never harmed anyone who surrendered. These stories may contain truth, but they do not return stolen cargo or erase fear from the decks of captured ships. The active listener can hold both facts at once. Maritime labor was often brutal, and piracy was also brutal. Escape from exploitation did not automatically create justice. The sleeper does not need to judge anyone tonight. The wind is already doing enough. Treasure chests are useful in stories because they fit neatly beneath sand. Real plunder was less tidy. A captured vessel might contain coins, plate, jewels, and precious metals. More often, it carried ordinary goods with market value: sugar, cocoa, indigo, tobacco, cloth, leather, timber, fish, flour, tools, weapons, medicine, wine, spirits, rope, sails, and food. Pirates took the cargo, the ship, or both. They also took information. A captured captain knew which routes were busy. A mate might know where a convoy had separated. Letters revealed prices, destinations, and political changes. A chart could be more valuable than a silver spoon. A skilled pilot, familiar with local waters, could save a ship from grounding. The Swift's hold contains very little romantic treasure. There are 2 sacks of coin, locked separately and counted twice. There are silver buckles, buttons, and fragments of plate. Most of the value lies in cargo that must be sold. Dried cod, wool cloth, barrels of sugar, spare ironwork, and a chest of surgical instruments taken from a merchant surgeon who was allowed to keep his clothes and personal letters. Selling stolen goods requires cooperation on land. Pirates need fences, corrupt merchants, sympathetic officials, frightened shopkeepers, and ports willing to ask few questions. A coin can be spent almost anywhere. 50 barrels of fish are harder to hide. That is one reason crews moved. Familiar harbors became dangerous. Governors changed. Pardons were offered and withdrawn. Naval patrols arrived. A port that welcomed money one year might hang pirates next. Plunder also created arguments aboard. Was a gold ring private property? If found inside a captured coat, did medicine belong to the common stock? Could a sailor hide coins before the official division? Articles tried to answer these questions because nothing destroys cooperation faster than suspicion after success. Rook searches captured vessels carefully, not because he is honest, but because he understands thieves. The great chest from stories is usually a collection of smaller objects, weighed, counted, broken, bartered, stolen again, lost, or spent in a few loud weeks ashore. Tonight, the most valuable items aboard are dry tinder, warm wool, sound, rope, and casks that do not leak. Wealth changes with weather. 12 guns sit aboard the Swift, and none is useful against cold. Most are small enough to be handled by a compact crew. They fire round, shot for hulls and rigging, smaller projectiles for close range, or warning shots intended to persuade a merchant captain that surrender is wiser than resistance. Pirates often preferred intimidation to battle. Battle-damaged prizes, torn sails, shattered masts, dead specialists, and holes near the waterline reduced profit. A fast approach, a frightening flag, many armed men visible on deck, and a shot across the bow could end a chase without prolonged fighting. The famous black flag was not one universal pirate design. Different captains used different symbols and colors. A dark flag might announce identity and demand surrender. A red flag could signal that no quarter would be expected. Flags were tools of communication and theater. The point was not decoration. The point was to shape the other captain's decision before boarding became necessary. The Swift's flag is folded below, dry inside a chest. Displaying it tonight would serve no purpose. There is no audience, except the sea. The guns are secured behind their ports to reduce water entering. Each carriage is restrained by thick rope. A loose cannon on a rolling deck can kill without being fired. Powder is stored in the magazine, protected from sparks and moisture. Cartridges and charges must be handled with strict care, even among men who reject other discipline. Weapons aboard include muskets, pistols, cutlasses, boarding axes, knives, pikes, and tools that become weapons when needed. But most hours at sea are spent touching rope, wood, canvas, food, and pumps rather than steel. A pirate may carry a pistol in a sash and spend the entire day scraping a deck. A cutlass does not reef a sail. A musket does not cork a seam. Tonight, the axes are being used for ice. The boarding pikes remain in their racks. Pistols are kept beneath coats where the locks may stay dry. Violence is present aboard, but labor is what keeps violence afloat. 3 weeks ago, the Swift chased a merchant brig for nearly 9 hours. The morning began with a pale sail on the western horizon. Silvera judged its course. Vane studied the wind. The crew cleared the deck, prepared weapons, and raised more canvas than caution recommended. A chase at sea is a long argument between hulls, sails, crews, wind, and weight. The merchant brig was larger but heavily loaded. The Swift was lighter and carried more hands to adjust sail. For hours, the distance changed, so slowly that only experienced eyes could see it. The crew watched the angle of masts against the horizon. A small mistake aboard either vessel could decide everything. The merchant captain tried to reach a fog bank. Vane altered course to cut him off. The Swift's sails were wetted, so the fibers would swell and reduce the passage of air. Unnecessary weight was shifted. Men remained, ready at braces and sheets. By afternoon, the pirate brigantine had closed enough to fire. The first shot fell short. The second crossed the merchant's bow. The third was never needed. The brig lowered sail and surrendered. There was no cinematic duel. No man swung from a rope. No sword flashed beneath a perfect sun. The boarding party climbed over a wet rail and found frightened sailors standing beside cargo they did not own. The prize carried cloth, iron tools, onions, cider, and letters. It also carried winter coats. The Swift took nearly everything useful, including the coat you wear now. Vane offered places to 3 sailors. 1 accepted. 2 refused and were left aboard, with enough sail and provisions to reach land. The captured captain cursed the pirates as they departed. He was correct to do so. That chase delayed the Swift by 2 days and drew her farther north. The onions improved the broth, the cloth patched sails, the coats may save, lives tonight at sea. Benefit and consequence often travel in the same cargo hold. When pirates captured a ship, the experience depended greatly on the crew involved, the resistance offered, the cargo found, and the mood of armed men. Some captives were beaten or tortured to reveal hidden valuables. Some were killed in battle. Some captains were punished because their own sailors described them as cruel. Others were released with a smaller vessel, provisions, or damaged rigging. Pirates might burn a prize, keep it, strip it, ransom it, or allow it to continue. Sailors were often invited to join. The word invited can hide pressure. A man standing on a captured deck, surrounded by weapons and uncertain of his next wage, did not choose under peaceful conditions. Yet some genuinely preferred pirate service to their previous ship. Better shares, elected officers, compensation for injury, and escape from harsh discipline were powerful attractions. Specialists were particularly valuable. Carpenters, surgeons, navigators, coopers, armorers, and men familiar with local waters could be persuaded or forced to remain. A ship cannot survive on courage alone. The Swift surgeon, Thomas Bell, did not join willingly. He was taken from a merchantman carrying medicines to Boston. At first, he was watched constantly. He refused to sign the articles. Vane told to him he would be released after the next suitable capture or safe landing. Months passed. Bell treated fever, stitched cuts, set a broken wrist, and removed 2 damaged toes. Gradually, the guard disappeared. He still has not signed. No one asks often now. Freedom aboard a pirate ship can be real for some and absent for others. At the same time, the crew's democratic arrangements do not erase coercion beyond their circle. Bell has been on deck twice tonight, examining hands and faces. He carries a lantern, linen, a small bottle of spirits, and the weary expression of a man who knows he may be needed before dawn. When he passes you, he glances at your bleeding thumb. "Move it," he says. You bend the thumb. "Keep moving it," he continues aft. That is the entire consultation. The surgeon's chest contains instruments that make brave men look away. Knives, saws, forceps, needles, probes, bandages, splints, cups, jars, and bottles are arranged with care. Cleanliness matters, but the understanding of infection is limited. Instruments may be washed, wiped, heated, or used again under conditions no modern patient would accept. Surgery at sea is practical and urgent. A deep cut must be closed or bound. A broken limb must be set. A tooth causing agony may be pulled. A limb destroyed by shot or crushed timber may need to be removed. Alcohol can dull fear and pain, but there is no reliable anesthesia in the modern sense. Most medical work is less dramatic. Bell treats infected fingers, burns, fevers, stomach illness, rashes, lice, sprains, frost damage, and the endless consequences of damp clothing and poor diet. He checks water, argues for fresh food when prizes provided, and insists that men with certain symptoms be separated when space allows. The medicines reflect centuries of mixed knowledge. Some plants and treatments help. Others do little. Bloodletting, purging, mercury, compounds, herbal preparations, opiates, spirits, poultices, and vinegar may all appear in maritime practice. A surgeon can be skilled, observant, and still trapped inside the medicine of his age. Pirate crews valued surgeons enough to force them aboard because injuries threatened profit and survival. A man unable to grip rope reduced the working crew. An untreated wound could kill a specialist. No replacement could match. Tonight, Bell's greatest treatment is warmth. He orders cold men below before they collapse. He removes wet outer layers when dry clothing can be found. He warms hands gradually, rather than holding them too close to flame. He gives broth, watches speech, and checks whether shivering continues. The ship has no hospital. The sick lie in hammocks near the stern, where movement may be slightly easier, or wherever Bell can create space. Privacy does not exist. Pain becomes communal sound. The boy sent below earlier is now wrapped in sailcloth between two sleeping sailors. His shivering has slowed, but Bell remains nearby until it returns with strength. In this case, shivering is good news. The body is still fighting. Cold is tonight's enemy, but long voyages carry quieter threats. Scurvy begins with fatigue, weakness, and aching. Gums swell and bleed. Old wounds may reopen. Teeth loosen. Skin changes. The disease comes from a lack of vitamin C. Though no one aboard knows vitamins exist, sailors have observed that fresh fruits and vegetables can help. Different navies, captains, and physicians have experimented with citrus, greens, onions, sauerkraut, and other foods across centuries, but knowledge is uneven and not always applied. Preservation, supply, cost, and disbelief stand between observation and routine practice. Pirates are opportunistic nutritionists. They take what prizes carry. Fresh citrus from a warm port is eaten while it lasts. Onions and potatoes can survive longer. Green herbs, gathered near shore, may enter the pot. Turtles, fish, livestock, and fresh meat break the monotony of salt provisions. Then weeks at sea. Erase variety again. The onions captured 3 weeks ago are nearly gone. The cook has been using them sparingly. Their flavor in tonight's broth is more than comfort. It is one small defense against deficiency, though no one can calculate how much protection remains. The Swift's crew has not been at sea long enough on this leg for severe scurvy to dominate. Several men carry symptoms from earlier voyages: tender gums, slow-healing cuts, deep weariness. Salt, cold, and work make every weakness worse. Fresh food also affects morale. A single apple passed between friends can feel like proof that land still exists. Soft bread can remind a man of home more powerfully than a letter. Milk, greens, or fresh meat may transform the entire mood of a deck. You remember the last orange you ate in Nassau? It was bruised and shared with another sailor. Juice ran over your fingers. You licked the skin after the fruit was gone. Tonight, that memory is almost painfully bright. The sea reduces desire to simple things: dry socks, warm food, fresh water, a level floor, a door that does not leak, and fruit that has not crossed an ocean in a barrel. Merchant and naval discipline can be severe. A sailor may be flogged, confined, reduced in pay, put in irons, or punished according to regulations backed by the state. Captains sometimes abuse that authority. Many men who turn pirate carry scars from legal ships. Pirates reject some forms of command, but no armed community survives without consequences. The Swift's articles reserve the harshest punishment for stealing from the common stock, betraying the crew, abandoning a post during danger, or bringing fire near powder. Lesser offenses lead to lost shares, unpleasant labor, confinement, or settlement ashore. Marooning is the punishment most remembered in stories, leaving a person on an island or isolated coast with little equipment. It happened, though not every pirate crew used it, and not every deserted sailor was dramatically handed a pistol and one shot. Keel hauling belongs more strongly to naval and maritime punishment traditions than to the everyday reality of every pirate vessel. Popular culture gathers rare horrors and treats them as routine, real life. Aboard is harsh enough without adding every legend. Most disputes on the Swift begin with smaller things: a missing knife, an insult, a debt from dice, a stolen portion of food. Men living without privacy create friction from breath alone. 2 months ago, a sailor named Crow hid coins from a division. The money was found sewn inside his waistband. The crew voted to remove his share and leave him at the next inhabited harbor with his clothing and no weapon. Vane argued for a harsher result. Rook argued that killing a man over hidden silver would make every future dispute dangerous. Rook won. Crow cursed the ship from a muddy beach as the Swift sailed away. Tonight, no one has energy for quarrels. The weather has imposed its own discipline. Men work beside enemies because the alternative is entering the same water together. The cold creates obedience more efficiently than a whip. A ship carries more than cargo and men. It carries beliefs. Some sailors refuse to whistle because they say it invites stronger wind. Others touch a coin, charm, tooth, stone, ribbon, or scrap of scripture before climbing aloft. Certain birds are treated with respect. Certain dreams are discussed only after daylight. A sailor may laugh another man's superstition while quietly obeying his own. The swift has no single religion and no single collection of fears. 1. Man keeps a small wooden cross beneath his shirt. Another carries verses, folded into oilskin. A third has a pierced coin tied around his wrist. The cook pours the first drop of a newly opened bottle onto the deck, not every time, but often enough for others to notice. These habits are not simply ignorance. They are attempts to create order where control is limited. A sailor can trim sail, repair rope, read cloud, and follow sound seamanship. Yet a hidden reef or sudden squall may still destroy him. When skill reaches its boundary, ritual begins. Pirates are especially surrounded by stories because they live outside ordinary protection. They cannot easily enter every port, seek help from every official, or trust every stranger. Betrayal is expected. Pardons may be traps. Former companions may become witnesses. A mysterious light on the horizon can be a merchant, a patrol, or imagination. Tonight, the crew's attention settles on a small gray bird that appeared near sunset and has remained near the stern through impossible wind. It rises, vanishes into spray, then returns to the ship's wake. One sailor says land must be near. Another says the bird carries the soul of a drowned fisherman. Silvera says it is probably following the ship because the disturbed water may expose food. All three explanations provide comfort to someone. You watch the bird for several minutes. It is effortless where every man is struggling. Its wings alter by the smallest degrees. It uses the same wind that makes the ship groan. Then darkness absorbs it. You are left with rope in your hands and the feeling that something living knows the way south. The wind does not stop. It changes. For nearly an hour, the Swift has climbed steep waves beneath a hard northwesterly. Then the gusts weaken. The rigging's high note falls. The sea remains heavy, but the violence between sail and air lessens. Men look towards Vane. A sudden easing can be relief, or it can be the space between weather systems. Experienced sailors do not celebrate too quickly. They study the cloud, pressure, swell, and direction of the cold. The captain orders no extra sail. This restraint saves the ship from a common temptation. After hours of reduced speed, crews want movement. They see calmer air and raise canvas. If the wind returns sharply, the ship is caught carrying too much. The Swift continues under shortened sail. The quieter interval reveals sounds hidden by the gale. Water runs along the deck. Ice fragments knock against the scuppers. Blocks creak. Somewhere below, a loose spoon rolls back and forth with each movement. The pump handle rises and falls. You hear men breathing. For the first time since coming on deck, you hear the ocean not as one roar, but as separate waves. Each approaches from darkness, lifts the stern, travels beneath the hull, and moves forward into night. A sailor named Finch begins telling you about a room he once rented in Portsmouth. The room had a narrow bed, one chair, and a window facing a brick wall. He complained about it every day. He now describes it as though it were a palace. Memory improves buildings. He tells you the bed had a mattress filled with straw. There was a fireplace downstairs. On Sundays, the landlady made pudding. You ask why he left. Couldn't pay, he says. Then he laughs quietly, because the answer contains his entire life. The calmer wind lasts 12 minutes. A gust strikes from farther north, colder and cleaner than before. The sails crack. The rigging tightens. Vane's caution is rewarded. No additional canvas is lost because none was raised. The boatswain calls for the foretopsail to be reduced further. This means men must climb. From the deck, the mast seems tall in daylight. At night, it seems endless. The shrouds rise into darkness, slick with ice. Ratlines cross them like the steps of a ladder, but each one is narrow, hard, and moving. You are not sent aloft. Finch is. He removes his outer mittens because he needs a better grip, tucks them inside his coat, and joins 5 others at the weather shrouds. Each man waits for the ship's roll, then climbs. Timing matters. Fighting the movement wastes strength. Moving with it turns the mast's swing into assistance. The men become silhouettes against a low patch of cloud. They reach the yard, spread along it, and lean over the sail. Their feet rest on a line beneath the yard. Their bodies depend on balance, grip, and the man beside them. To reef a square sail, part of the canvas is gathered and secured so less area remains exposed to wind. The exact operation demands coordination between those aloft and those handling lines below. In cold weather, stiff canvas resists folding. Reef points are hard to tie. Fingers lose sensation. The men on deck ease and haul according to the boatswain's calls. Above, Finch works with bare fingers. A wave lifts the bow. The mast sweeps across the sky. For a moment, every man on the yard is nearly horizontal to the horizon. No one can see the horizon, but every stomach understands. The sail snaps. One sailor loses his cap. It spins once through lantern light and disappears into the Atlantic. No one attempts to save it. A cap is valuable. A life is more so. The reef is secured slowly. The remaining canvas is set. The men return, one by one, descending with swollen hands and faces pale from exposure. Finch reaches the deck last. His fingers are white at the tips. Bell takes him below immediately. Warmth must return gradually. Rubbing frozen skin harshly can cause further damage. The surgeon wraps hands and places them beneath Finch's coat, close to the body. The ship now carries less sail. She also carries one less warm cap. The ice on the rail is visible. The ice aloft is more dangerous because it is harder to reach. Spray and frozen mist cling to yards, stays, shrouds, blocks, and furled canvas. The weight is distributed high above the ship's center as it increases. The Swift rolls more deeply and returns more slowly. The Swift rigging also changes shape. Lines thicken, blocks resist. Sails become difficult to control. No one aboard possesses a device that can remove all of it safely in darkness. Men strike what they can from deck. Others climb only when necessary. The ship's motion sometimes breaks ice free on its own, sending heavy pieces down without warning. The boatswain orders everyone to keep clear of the base of the mainmast, unless working there. A moment later, a slab falls from the mainyard. It hits the deck hard enough to split into bright fragments. One piece slides between your boots. Another strikes a bucket and dents it. The warning was not theoretical. The safest solution is warmer air or a course that reduces spray. Neither is immediately available. Vane and Silvera discuss turning southeast, placing the wind differently and seeking lower latitude. The difficulty is the sea. Turning requires the ship to pass through an angle where waves may strike her broadside. Done poorly, the maneuver can lay her over or carry away weakened rigging. Sailors call many dangerous choices necessary because the alternative is worse. Rook orders the cargo checked before any turn. If barrels shift while the ship changes course, the balance may worsen. Men descend into the hold with lanterns protected behind glass and horn. They test lashings, drive wedges, and listen for movement. The hold is colder than expected, not because air enters freely, but because the entire hull has become a container of winter. The timbers sweat. Casks feel like stone. Water moves in the bilge beneath floorboards. You are sent below to help secure a barrel of iron tools. It has shifted 2 inches against its rope. 2 inches does not sound important on land. At sea, movement invites more movement. You and 3 men force it back with levers and tighten the lashing. Above, the ship rolls. Every suspended object swings towards the same side. For a breath, the hold seems to lean into the dark. Then the swift rises again, slower. Every wooden ship leaks. The question is how much. Water enters through seams, deck openings, damage, and the ordinary working of a hull under strain. It collects in the lowest part of the vessel, the bilge, where it mixes with dirt, spilled cargo, rot, and everything else that finds its way down. Pumps remove it. The Swift carries manual pumps operated by men who would rather be doing almost anything else. Pumping is repetitive, exhausting, and essential. The water rising from below smells foul even in cold air. It is not the clean sea that breaks white beyond the rail. It has lived inside the ship. Voss measures the depth with a sounding rod. The level is higher than at sunset. Not dangerously high, not comfortably low. The hull's hard working in the sea may have opened a seam. Water may also be entering through the deck and draining below. The pumps must continue until daylight allows a better inspection. You take a place at the handle. 4 men work in rhythm. Lift, press, lift, press. The mechanism groans. Water spills into a channel and runs towards the side. At first, the task warms you. Then fatigue enters the shoulders. The motion repeats until thought becomes unnecessary. You watch the lantern swing and let your body follow the pump. This is the hidden labor of sailing. Paintings show ships under full canvas. Stories show battles and storms. They rarely remain with men. Pumping for an hour, scraping decks, repairing seams, drying powder, counting biscuit, and carrying buckets. A ship survives through repetition. The pump discharges steadily. Voss checks the level again after 30 minutes. It has fallen. That small result moves through the crew more quickly than praise. Falling water means the pumps are winning. Winning does not mean safety. It means the problem remains within human strength. You continue until another group replaces you. When you release the handle, your arms keep remembering the motion. During the next hour, the Swift becomes a machine built from human voices. The captain gives direction. The sailing master judges course. The boatswain translates intention into rope and canvas. The quartermaster moves labor where it is needed. The carpenter watches the hull. The surgeon watches the men. The cook protects the fire. Ordinary sailors make every plan real. No single man can turn the ship south. The helmsman moves the rudder, but sails must be adjusted. Braces must be hauled. Sheets eased. Men must stand ready at lines that may run suddenly. Others must remain clear of ropes, capable of crushing a foot or sweeping a body across the deck. The order comes quietly. The Swift will wear around, turning her stern through the wind rather than forcing her bow directly against it. The maneuver uses more sea room, but may be safer in the present conditions. Stations are assigned. You stand at the mizzen sheet with 5 men. Ice is knocked from the line. The coil is cleared so it can run without tangling. No foot is placed inside it. A rope under heavy load can tighten faster than thought. The helmsman begins the turn. The stern swings. For several moments, the ship presents more of her side to the waves. A dark wall of water rises beyond the rail. It strikes with a weight felt in teeth and knees. Water crosses the deck, filling boots and driving broken ice towards the scuppers. "Hold!" the boatswain shouts. Men hold. The sails lose wind and flap violently. Blocks hammer. The mainmast trembles. Then the stern passes through. Canvas fills from the new side. The brigantine heels, steadies, and begins moving on a more southerly course. The whole operation lasts minutes. It feels longer than the night. When the lines are secured, no one cheers. Sailors save celebration for harbors and exaggeration. They listen to the ship. Her movement is different. Spray now crosses less directly. The roll remains deep, but the bow meets the sea at a kinder angle. The compass shows a course carrying the Swift towards warmer latitude, though warmth is still many miles and many hours away. The men breathe. The machine continues. Pirate articles describe shares of treasure. They do not describe shares of darkness. Yet hardship is divided as surely as coin. One man loses feeling in his hands. Another loses sleep. The cook loses fuel. The carpenter loses wedges and dry oakum. The ship loses speed. everyone loses the certainty that the voyage will end according to plan. The idea of equal shares is attractive because ordinary maritime life is deeply unequal. Owners remain ashore and profit. Captains receive authority and larger returns. Sailors risk injury for wages that may be delayed, reduced, or never paid. Pirate crews attempt a different arrangement, but equality has limits. Strong personalities dominate. Skilled men receive extra. Captains influence votes. Violence and reputation shape speech. A man who is technically free to disagree may remain silent when surrounded by friends of the captain. Still, the shared risk is real. Vane's coat is better than yours, but he is on deck. Rook has a dry corner below, but he gives it to Finch while the surgeon warms his hands. The cook could hide fuel, yet he keeps broth hot for men returning from the rail. Not because pirates are secretly gentle, because survival aligns interests. A damaged hand belongs to one man. The lost labor belongs to all. This practical solidarity is one reason pirate crews could function, despite their instability. Compensation for injury, agreed shares, and votes were not modern kindness. They were systems for retaining armed workers who could choose another captain or another ship. You think of the silver promised to a man who loses a limb. The payment sounds generous until imagined beside the loss itself. Coin can purchase food, lodging, and assistance ashore. It cannot climb rigging. Tonight, every finger you can still move is worth more than its future. Compensation. You flex your injured thumb. It bends. Bell's brief instruction remains useful. No one calls the swift home while land is near. Far from shore, the word changes. Men create private spaces inside public misery. A hammock is marked with colored thread. A sea chest contains a spoon, spare shirt, comb, letters, tobacco, dice, and objects too small to sell. A nail near a beam becomes one man's place for a cap. A corner beside a gun is claimed by habit. Your possessions fit inside a canvas bag. 2 shirts, 1 spare pair of stockings, a wooden spoon, a clasp knife, a broken comb, a length of cord, a smooth stone taken from a beach you may never see again. A letter whose ink has spread from damp. The letter is from your sister. It contains no great declaration. She writes about a neighbor's roof, the price of flour, a dog that follows, her to market, and the apple tree behind the house. Ordinary details. Survive rereading better than advice. You keep the letter inside oiled cloth. On difficult nights, you do not read it. You only touch the folded packet to confirm it remains. Other men carry similar anchors. Finch keeps a brass button from his father's coat. Silvera owns a small tile painted blue and white. The cook has a narrow iron key that opens nothing aboard. Rook keeps ledgers from previous voyages, as though numbers themselves were family. Pirates are often imagined without attachment, moving freely from port to port. In truth, movement can increase attachment to tiny objects. When a person owns no room, a spoon becomes part of identity. When every horizon changes, one stone can remain still below deck. The ship's few dry corners are crowded with these private worlds. The Atlantic cannot see them. It moves the whole vessel without learning what any man fears losing. The first nights aboard a ship are often the hardest. A new sailor waits for the deck to become still before allowing his body to relax. It never does. Every creak sounds like damage. Every change in the wind feels like warning. A boat overhead becomes an emergency. A line striking the mast becomes the beginning of disaster. Experienced sailors learn another kind of sleep. They do not wait for movement to stop. They learn which movement belongs to the ship and which movement deserves attention. The regular roll becomes rhythm. The ordinary creak becomes reassurance. A sudden silence may wake them more quickly than noise, because silence means something. Familiar has changed. The hammock helps teach this lesson. Suspended above the deck, it follows the vessel with a softer delay. The body is held while the floor moves separately beneath it. At first, the sensation can cause sickness. Later, the same motion that once disturbed sleep begins to create it. Dreams at sea borrow from the ship. A man dreams of walking through a house whose corridors tilt. He dreams of trees bending like masts. He dreams of bells heard beneath water. Sometimes he wakes believing he is ashore and feels alarm when the room moves. Sometimes, after months at sea, he reaches land and lies awake because the bed remains still. Sleep is never complete safety aboard. The watch may call, weather may change. A sail may split, a strange ship may appear at dawn. Men sleep, dressed because waking must be quick. Boots remain close, weapons remain where hands can find them. A sailor's rest is a temporary loan from the next task, yet the body takes what it can. Men sleep through cannon fire after long enough at sea. They sleep beside pumps, beneath dripping beams, against coils of rope, and inside. Hammocks crowded so closely that neighbors breathe against the same canvas. Exhaustion can transform noise into distance. This is why the story of a pirate night is also a story about trust. You cannot inspect every line while sleeping. You cannot steer from your hammock. You cannot watch the horizon and close your eyes at the same time. Rest requires believing that the men above will notice what matters and wake you before the danger becomes too large. Pirate crews may distrust governments, merchants, captains, courts, and one another's hands near a pile of silver, but every sleeping sailor trusts the watch with his life. The trust may be reluctant. It is still real. Tonight, after the ice, that trust feels stronger. You know what the deck demanded because you stood there. You know what the next watch must continue. When your turn ends, sleep is not abandonment. It is part of the crew's division of labor. Rested hands will be needed later. The ship moves. The hammock follows. And somewhere between one roll and the next, the mind learns to release. The deck. The adventure of piracy exists inside a larger and darker Atlantic system. Ships carry wealth because empires extract it. Sugar plantations depend upon enslaved labor. Tobacco, indigo, and other commodities move through networks built by violence. European wars extend into colonial waters. Privateers attack enemy commerce. Merchants insure cargo. Sailors cross between legal and illegal work. Coastal communities profit from goods whose origins are deliberately ignored. Some pirate ships begin as merchantmen. Some begin as privateers. Some, like the historically documented Whydah, begin in the slave trade, before being captured and converted by pirates. Timber and canvas do not. Choose the purpose of a vessel. A ship can carry human beings in chains on one voyage, stolen treasure on another, and archaeologists' questions. Centuries later, pirates sometimes included formerly enslaved men and sailors of African descent. For some, a pirate crew offered a path away from bondage or racist maritime hierarchies. Yet piracy did not stand outside slavery. Pirates could capture slave ships, sell enslaved people, release some, recruit some, or participate in the same economy they claimed to reject. The record resists a simple, heroic picture. The Swift has never carried a human cargo under vein, but she takes goods produced by enslaved labor and sells them through merchants who ask no moral questions. Every barrel of sugar in the hold contains a history no invoice describes. For the listener awake, this wider truth matters. The sea story is not only wind, canvas, and brave men on ropes. It is also trade, empire, exploitation, survival, and the uneven value assigned to different lives. For the listener drifting towards sleep, you need not hold every weight. Tonight, the ship holds enough. The narrative remains here, on one deck in cold darkness, where 63 men are trying to keep timber upright until morning. History can widen the horizon without breaking the calm. It happens after the turn south. The ship has begun to settle into her new course. Spray is reduced. Men believe the worst may have passed. The belief is not spoken because sailors fear inviting correction. Then a wave approaches from a different angle. Perhaps it belongs to an older swell crossing beneath the present wind. Perhaps the turn places the Swift poorly for one unlucky moment. No one sees its full shape in darkness. The stern lifts. The deck tilts farther than before. Loose ice rushes to port. A bucket breaks free. Men grab lines, rails, guns one another. The lantern near the main hatch swings almost horizontal. Below, cargo strains against lashings. The Swift continues over. For a breath, the return does not come. This is the moment every sailor recognizes without needing words. A ship can roll deeply and recover. She can also reach a point where weight, wind, water, and movement no longer permit return. You hold the rail with both hands. The sea is close enough to touch. Then something gives above. A sheet of ice breaks from the main rigging and falls into the water. The release is sudden. The mast shudders. Weight leaves the high side. The Swift begins to rise, slowly at first, then with force. The deck passes beneath your boots and continues the other way. Men stumble. Water drains. The lantern crashes against its guard, but remains lit. No one speaks for several seconds. Vane orders another inspection aloft and below. Rook sends men to clear every remaining accessible patch of ice. Voss checks frames and lashings. Bell checks the sailor whose shoulder struck a gun carriage. The deepest roll becomes memory almost immediately, because the next task arrives. That is how survival often feels. Not triumph, continuation. You strike ice until your injured thumb opens again. This time, you do not notice the blood until it warms your palm. The wind holds from the northwest. On the new course, it pushes the Swift towards lower latitude. No one expects warmth at dawn. The change will be gradual, measured first not by comfort, but by the behavior of spray. Ice forms more slowly along the rail. That is the first sign. The crew clears what remains. Without constant new layers, the task becomes possible. Sections of rigging still carry dangerous weight, but the ship's roll grows quicker and more familiar as ice leaves her upper works. Silvera marks the course and estimates speed. The brigantine is not, heading directly towards the Azores now. Survival has replaced destination. Once weather improves, the crew can vote again, repair the plan, or invent another. Sailors live through revisions. No voyage follows the straight line drawn before departure. Wind alters it. Current alters it. Illness, damage, prizes, enemies, hunger, and human impatience alter it. A chart shows intention. A wake shows reality. The watch is reorganized. Men who have worked longest are sent below. Others return to deck with the slow faces of interrupted sleep. Finch remains near the galley, hands wrapped, sensation returning painfully to his fingers. The boy who became too cold is awake and drinking broth. Bell says both will keep their hands. This news spreads without announcement. You are allowed below for 1 hour. The ladder feels steeper than before. Warmth does not wait beneath it, but the absence of wind is enough to seem warm. Hammocks hang in dim light. Wet clothing steams faintly near the protected galley space. The lower deck smells terrible and familiar. You find your hammock. The canvas is damp. You climb in anyway. At first, your body continues working. Your arms remember the pump. Your hands close around an invisible mallet. Your legs adjust to a roll that no longer needs conscious balance. Sleep does not come immediately. The axes above have stopped. Their absence is louder than the blows were. The coldest hour is often the one before sunrise. The body has spent the night producing heat. Clothing is damp. Fatigue lowers resistance. The sky remains dark, yet the promise of morning has begun somewhere beyond sight. You wake before the watch calls you. The lower deck has changed color. It is still dim, but the lantern is no longer the only light. A faint gray enters around the hatch. Men notice without speaking. Dawn at sea begins as permission to see problems. When you climb on deck again, The Atlantic is revealed piece by piece. Waves are steel gray, their tops torn white by wind. The sky in the east is pale beneath layers of cloud. Ice coats parts of the rigging, but much of the rail is dark timber again. The scale of the night becomes visible. Broken ice lies in corners like shattered glass. One boat has a split cover. A line has chafed nearly halfway through. The foretopsail is badly stained and stiff. A gun carriage has shifted despite its tackles. The deck carries marks from tools, boots, and water. The ship is damaged. The ship is moving. Those truths stand together. Voss inspects the hull and reports no major structural failure. The pumps are controlling the water. Silvera believes the storm center is moving away. The cook opens the galley vent slightly wider. Smoke rises. Into morning, the grey bird returns near the stern. This time, everyone can see it clearly. It is small, ordinary, and alive. One man laughs at how little it is. Another says size has nothing to do with luck. The bird follows for several minutes, then turns south and disappears. The swift continues in the same direction. Breakfast is biscuits softened in hot water, a little salt fish, and the final onions from the captured brig. No one complains. After a hard night, ordinary food becomes ceremonial. Men sit wherever. The deck offers support. Cups steam. The cook serves the injured first, then the watch, then everyone else. According to order, he insists, is practical rather than kind. Sunlight does not break through, but the sky brightens enough to reveal faces. They look older than yesterday. Salt has dried white on coats. Beards hold melted frost. Hands are wrapped. Eyes are red from wind and interrupted sleep. Yet conversation returns in fragments. Finch claims he saw a wave taller than a church. The man beside him says Finch has never entered a church tall enough to compare. Someone asks whether the vote eastward can be held again. Rook replies that men may vote after they finish saving the ship from the previous vote. Even Vane smiles at that. Humor aboard is not decoration. It releases pressure without denying danger. Sailors make jokes near death because silence can give fear too much space. After eating, the crew begins repair. Chafed rope is replaced or served with protective material. Wet canvas is adjusted. Ice is cleared from inaccessible places as conditions permit. The carpenter checks seams. The cooper examines water casks. The surgeon unwraps hands and looks for color, returning to skin. Work continues because survival creates more work. There is no final scene in which every problem disappears. There is only a ship in daylight, damaged but under control, heading south across a sea that has not become friendly. By noon, the sea has not changed color, yet Silvera says the ship is entering a different future. Every mile south alters possibility. The air may remain bitter for another day. Ice may still cling to shaded rope, but the course now points towards waters where freezing spray will become less likely, where the crew may open hatches, longer, dry clothing more effectively, and raise enough sail to recover lost time. There is no line painted across the Atlantic, to show where one climate ends and another begins. Sailors experience geography through the body. A coat is unbuttoned, breath stops smoking in daylight, butter softens. A rope that was rigid bends again. Flying fish appear. Different birds follow the wake. The sea carries patches of weed from distant currents. Currents form roads without edges. Some move warm water north, others carry cold water south. Where they meet, fog can gather with astonishing speed. The Grand Banks are famous for this mixture of water, weather, fish, and danger. Fishing fleets come because life gathers there. Wrecks occur because fog, shoals, storms, and crowded routes gather there too. Pirates understood these invisible roads through experience rather than modern oceanography. They knew where merchant ships were likely to pass, where currents slowed or helped them, where prevailing winds changed by season, and where a damaged ship might find shelter. Their charts contained coastlines, soundings, hazards, and routes, but much knowledge traveled orally from pilot to pilot. Silvera has crossed these waters before, though never on the same path. No crossing is repeated exactly. The wind differs, the season differs. The ship carries a different load. Even the same current may meet the hull from another direction. He tells Vane that 2 days south could transform the voyage. Vane asks whether the ship can endure 2 days. Silvera looks at the repaired lines, the pumps, the shortened canvas, and the men eating on deck. "She endured last night," he says. It is not an answer based on certainty. It is the kind of answer sailors often have. You stand near the rail and watch sunlight touch a thin layer of ice. Beneath the swivel gun, a drop forms at the lower edge. It grows, trembles, and falls onto the deck. Then another follows. No one would call this melting warm. The air still bites. Your coat remains fastened. Yet the sound of water dripping from ice is different from the sound of axes breaking it. One is labor, the other is change. The crew begins hanging wet mittens and stockings in every protected current of air. Sailcloth is spread where it may dry. Hammocks are aired in turns. The ship looks untidy, almost domestic, covered with the small, evidence of men preparing to be comfortable again. Comfort will not arrive at once, neither does sleep. Both begin with permission, the belief that the next hour may demand less than the last. Years from now, if you survive long enough to tell this story, the night will change. The waves will grow taller with each telling. The ice will become thicker. The roll will last longer. The bird may become an albatross. The broth may become nothing but cold water. The captain may speak words he never spoke. Memory edits for meaning. Men ashore will ask about treasure and battles. Few will ask about the pump. They will want to know whether you saw a famous pirate buried, silver, or crossed swords beneath a black flag. They will not understand why you remember a cup of onion broth more clearly than captured coin. You may tell them about no bed and no heat. You may tell them how a hammock felt like luxury after the deck. You may tell them that the crew survived not through fearless heroism, But through layers of small competence, a lashing tightened, a sail reefed, a pump worked, a cold hand noticed, a turn delayed until cargo was secure. History often remembers captains. Ships are usually saved by groups. The Swift will not become famous. No museum will display her bell. No child will learn her name. She may be captured, wrecked, renamed, sold, or broken apart in a harbor. Most ships vanish from record because record is selective. Yet this night is real to everyone aboard it. A forgotten event can still contain a complete world. By late morning, your watch ends. The wind remains cold, but the ice no longer grows faster than the crew can remove it. The Swift holds her southerly course. Pumps are checked at longer intervals. A repaired line runs cleanly through its block. The cook has banked the fire. You descend below. The sleeping deck is quieter now. Some hammocks have been rolled, creating space. Others hold men who seem to have fallen asleep before. Their bodies fully stopped moving. You remove the outer coat and hang it where dripping water will not fall, directly onto another sleeper. The fisherman's stitched name remains inside the collar. You wonder whether he is warm somewhere on land. Your boots stay on. Your wool cap stays on. You climb into the hammock and settle diagonally across the canvas. The way. Experienced sailors learn to reduce the pressure around shoulders and back. The ship's roll moves through you. One side, center, the other side, center again. Above, men walk across the deck. The sound is softer than axes. Rope moves. A block knocks once against timber. Water passes along the hull in a steady rush. The ship is not safe in the permanent sense. No ship is. It is safe enough for this hour. Your fingers begin to warm beneath your arms. The injured thumb pulses. Fatigue gathers behind your eyes. For the listener who came for history, the night has shown what pirate life was more often made from: labor, hunger, wet clothing, shared rules, uncertain navigation, and the endless maintenance of a wooden world. For the listener who came for sleep, there is nothing more you need to do. The course has been changed. The pumps are holding. The watch is awake. Someone else is listening for the wind. You can let the ship carry the weight now. The Atlantic continues beyond the hull, mile after mile, beneath a brightening sky. Far astern, broken pieces of ice are already melting into the water from which they came. Ahead, no land is visible. The horizon is a long gray line, calm only from distance. The Swift sails south. Her sails are shortened. Her timbers creak. Her wake opens and closes behind her. Inside the lower deck, your hammock swings gently between two beams. It does not know the name of the ocean. It only follows movement. Breathe in as the ship rises. Breathe out as she settles. In and out. The men above will keep the bells. The helmsman will keep the compass. The carpenter will listen to the hull. The cook will guard the final warmth of the fire. And the sea, for all its cold and distance, will pass beneath you one dark mile at a time. There is no bed. There is no heat. But there is canvas around your shoulders, timber beneath the air, and a watchful crew between you and the night. The axes are silent, the ice is breaking. Morning has found the ship, and now, at last, you may sleep.